Let's face it, we see a lot of current and former football players who were also stars in other sports, and in many cases, these other sports helped them elevate their game in the world of football. For example, a lot of quarterbacks were formerly pitchers, as this helped elevate their throwing and their arm strength along with their arm stamina. Looking at guys like Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, and Jameis Winston, these guys were all MLB draft picks. Just look at Patrick Mahomes, whose dad played in the MLB. The way he throws the football is eerily similar to the way a pitcher throws a baseball pitch. And this has clearly elevated his game in a lot of ways. And now we've got a bunch of guys trying to do the stupid sidearm throws all the time. It looks great sometimes, but isn't a great thing to consistently do. There's also obviously a lot of crossover between football players having formerly played both basketball and track. But what about the sport of lacrosse? There is not a lot of crossover between football and lacrosse at all. And in this video, I want to dive into 5 former lacrosse stars who went on to become college football stars. And these guys were all committed to major lacrosse programs at one time or another in high school, and some even played a little bit of college lacrosse before going on to star in college football. Coming up first, we had current Texas defensive lineman Ethan Burke, who at one point was committed to play lacrosse at Maryland, would later decommit from Maryland, committing to the University of Michigan to play both lacrosse and football before decommitting to play football at Texas. For those of you that don't know, Maryland is a powerhouse in lacrosse. They've won 4 NCAA tournament championships, including 2 within the last 10 years in 2017 and 2022. They were also runner-ups in 2025, 2024, 2021, 2016, 2015, 2012, and 2011, and various times prior. This is generally one of, if not the best lacrosse program in the country, so Ethan Burke had to be a heck of a lacrosse player to even be committed there to begin with. Ethan's father, Zach, was a professional lacrosse player who lived and breathed the sport and got his son involved in the sport at a very young age. He didn't actually start playing football until his family moved from San Diego to Austin, Texas when he was a sophomore in high school. He quickly grew very enamored with the sport. Burke would later back off his Maryland pledge, preferring to play football over lacrosse, in part due to its very physical nature. He would commit to Michigan in November 2021. He would be committed there for about 2 weeks. That commitment would last up until the December early signing period, when the Texas Longhorns offered on the day of early signing period, and Burke would flip on the spot to Texas. Up to this point, Burke has had a very nice career for the Longhorns. In 2023 in particular, he recorded 41 total tackles, 9 of which for a loss and 5.5 for a sack. In 2024, his statistics weren't quite as great, recording 24 total tackles, 9 tackles for a loss, and 2 sacks. So, Burke is a mainstay on a current Texas team that's very good and is a consistent starter for them right now at the defensive end position. And Burke has been a very solid player for a Texas program that's been one of the best programs over the time that Burke has been in college. Coming up next is former Wisconsin Notre Dame quarterback Jack Coan, who was actually committed to play lacrosse at Notre Dame. Coan, a native of Long Island, had committed to Notre Dame for lacrosse as a freshman in high school. However, he began to field big-time offers from college football programs such as Wisconsin, Miami, Northwestern, Rutgers, Syracuse, and West Virginia, and eventually pivoted to football over lacrosse. Coan would eventually sign with the Wisconsin Badgers in the class of 2017, and he put together a pretty solid career for the Badgers, as he would start 3 games in 2018, where he'd find himself passing for 515 yards and 5 touchdowns, and in 2019, he started all 14 games for the Badgers, going 10-4 and throwing for 2,727 yards and 18 touchdowns, while also rushing for another 4 touchdowns. Unfortunately, Coan would be sidelined the entire 2020 season due to an injury prior to the season beginning, and he would get an extra year of eligibility out of it because he was able to medically redshirt, and he would end up transferring to Notre Dame of all schools, making it a true full circle moment for Coan. Of course, he did not play lacrosse for the Fighting Irish. Coan had a really solid season in his sole season with the Irish, starting all 13 games, going 11-2 and passing for 3,150 yards and 25 touchdowns, while rushing for another 2 touchdowns. Coan would go undrafted in the 2022 NFL draft and has never played in the NFL, although he has bounced around the XFL and the CFL. He's currently in the CFL playing for Saskatchewan Roughriders. Up next is former TCU linebacker Johnny Hodges, who actually briefly played lacrosse at the U.S. Naval Academy. When I say briefly, I seriously mean briefly, as in 1 game briefly. Johnny Hodges played 1 game of lacrosse at the U.S. Naval Academy before the season was shut down due to COVID. Hodges would end up transitioning to the sport of football, a sport that he played in high school, where he'd record 50 total tackles in 2021 for 3 of which were for a loss. This would result in him entering the transfer portal, becoming a somewhat coveted prospect in the portal. Hodges would transfer to TCU, where he was an instant impact linebacker for them, being named the Big 12 Newcomer of the Year in 2022 and a second-team All-Conference player. Hodges would actually lead the Horned Frogs in tackles with 87 in 2022, and this was the 2022 team that was the national runner-up. He would struggle with injuries throughout much of 2023, limiting him to only 4 games, allowing him to come back for yet another year due to a medical redshirt. In 2024, he would record 89 total tackles. Despite having a very solid college career, Hodges still has yet to get picked up by an NFL team, whether it be in a training camp or for a practice squad, has yet to play professional football. Up next, we get Sam Hubbard, a former Notre Dame lacrosse commit, who ended up playing defensive line at Ohio State and for the Cincinnati Bengals. Hubbard, who was actually a safety for Cincinnati Molo High School, a powerhouse in Ohio, ended up flipping from Notre Dame lacrosse to Ohio State football shortly after picking up an Ohio State football offer. Hubbard would go on to spend stints at linebacker and tight end before settling in at defensive end, and he had a very productive career with the Buckeyes. In 3 seasons with the Buckeyes, Hubbard will record 116 total tackles, 17 sacks, and 35 tackles for a loss, all while also collecting an interception. He was great for the Buckeyes. This would all result in Hubbard declaring for the 2018 NFL draft, being drafted in the 3rd round by his hometown team, the Cincinnati Bengals. Hubbard's time in Cincinnati went pretty good. All 7 of his seasons in the NFL were spent with the Cincinnati Bengals, and he would start 88 of 104 games and would record 398 total tackles, 38.5 of which were sacks. Hubbard had a very successful career with the Bengals. On top of all this, Hubbard was a leading figure in the resurgence of the Cincinnati Bengals franchise, having started in the Super Bowl for them, and having made one of the most famous plays in the history of the Bengals franchise. I'd say all things worked out very well for Hubbard, and he made the good choice choosing football over lacrosse. And finally, for the 5th and final player, we have Dante Trader Jr., who was at one point committed to play both football and lacrosse in Maryland, before ultimately deciding to stick with football. I mean, Trader was even a full-on 2-sport athlete while in college at Maryland. As a sophomore in 2023, he got named to multiple All-American publications as a lacrosse player. This is all after he initially decided to focus on football, and the football season ended in 2023. He had an itch to go back to lacrosse, and then just so happened to have gone on and become an All-American. Still, despite his success within the sport of lacrosse, Trader decided to go back to focusing solely on football. He'd spent 4 years playing football with the Terrapins, recording 190 total tackles, 3 of which were for a loss, recording 5 interceptions. This would all result in Trader getting drafted in the 5th round of the 2025 NFL draft by the Miami Dolphins, as his NFL career is just beginning to blossom. As of the time of making this video, we are 4 games into the 2025 NFL season, and Trader's already recorded 10 tackles, including having a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. He looks like he probably has a pretty bright future in the NFL. Well, thank you so much to everybody for watching. I'm going to be diving into a wide variety of different college football topics on this channel within the coming weeks, so please don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you so much.